There you go.
All right, guys, sorry for the delay. I wanted to thank you guys for coming tonight, and welcome to the Cedar Valley Maker Space, the November 15th, 2017. My name is Jeff, and I am the founder and CEO of a small company in Waverly called Robotics, and I wanted to talk to you about the development of my GENESIS platform. So, I wanted to give you a quick overview of basically my history. So back in 1984, the TV show Transformers started, and I fell in love with it right away. I was about 6 years old, and I decided that I needed to have one for myself. Of course, I saw movies like Star Wars and such, and I love C-3PO. I started getting electronics gifts from my parents as kids, things from Radio Shack, do-it-yourself kits, Legos, erector sets, all still popular and all very great toys. Between 1985 up until now, I systematically destroyed pretty much everything that I owned, trying to figure out how it worked and try to get it back together. Usually it ended up in a big junk pile in my bedroom, and that was the end of my toys. So in 1990, I was a junior high student, and I took all of the how-to classes that you could find, including home ec, shop, and all that such, basically just to learn how to build anything that I could. I began my actual formal education at Hawkeye Community College in the electronics program, and in 2001, I actually developed my first robot. And it wasn't too much. It was basically just a little kit robot that could follow a line around a room. In 2003, I started the GENESIS project. In 2010 and 2012, I was at UNI, and I graduated twice. That's why I have 2 dates for my bachelor's and my master's degree in electrical engineering technology. And in 2014, I started Robotics as a formal company. So in building the first GENESIS, over here you see what I call the Mark I, the original GENESIS, and obviously this is the Mark II, which we'll talk about shortly. I used household components for the first one. Copper pipe, VCR parts, the bottom pieces are part of a record player, turntable, pretty much anything that I decided could be a robot someday. And I hacksawed and dremeled pieces apart until they fit into what you see there. I followed tutorials online. YouTube really wasn't a big thing back then, so I used things like Hackaday and such that kind of gave you just a scripted tutorial. I took inspiration from a lot of bigger projects like the MIT robot Kismet, which is a very expressive humanoid-looking robot, the Osmo project, and a Japanese project called Akio, which I don't know if is in development anymore. And of course, robots like Star Wars and iRobot. I used a lot of duct tape and zip ties to hold it together, as any good engineer should. And the basic electronics for the first one was a basic stamp 2. I later used a parallax propeller, all standard RC servos, and an EMIC text-to-speech module for the voice with a parallax say-it module to get voice recognition. These are just kind of some pictures of when I was starting building it. I used the copper pipe for the eyes as a gimbal. I built this little box, and all the gray stuff was a computer case that I hacked and cut away. And these are basically just some development pictures, and you can see all of the servos and what I call the servo bank. They were all centered in the head, which actually got to be really heavy and cumbersome. Just a couple more pictures here. 2 of them I wanted to talk about specifically. One, the duct tape. That was my first attempt at a face, and I know it looks hideous. I actually call that Seti the First, because if you ever look at the picture of the Egyptian mummy, Seti the First, well, there you go. No, it wasn't intentional. And this one right here, and this is probably one of my favorite pictures of GENESIS. This is the picture that I knew that this could actually work as a humanoid robot. The reason for that is I uploaded it to Facebook. And when you upload a picture of anybody to Facebook, it puts that little yellow box around your head that says tag this person. So I tagged me, and then I put one around this head, and it said, who is this? And I thought, well, if Facebook thinks it's a person, maybe I got something going. In designing the Mark II, I really needed to rethink the entire design of the Mark I, mostly because of hardware malfunctions. Some of you might have heard me say earlier that I had taken this the first one to several presentations, and about a third of the time it refused to work. And we called that personality, but I wasn't very happy with it. And hardware malfunctions, every time it would move around, it would shake the screws loose, and I would have to do repairs on it every single time I tried it. So I needed to design out all of that. The software limitations of the basic stamp were, I was basically at the maximum for what I could actually stuff in there for programming, and I really needed a more expandable platform. And of course, the reproducibility of it. If I wanted to build one of these for you, I would need to find, all of these record players, VCRs, and whatever I could find the first time and try to duplicate it again. And that would take a lot of time, so I wanted to make it easier to build, and that's where I came up with this design. I'm using a 3D printed design here, obviously. All of the plastic you see is 3D printed. The electronics are from Parallax.com, Adafruit.com, and Servo City, and some parts I get from eBay because they're simply cheaper. If you haven't heard of Adafruit or Servo City, they have a lot of great components for building robots or any type of electronic kits. And the new software is being run on an Arduino. I use two of them actually. I use a Mega and a Nano, but I suppose any two could work. I've changed the sizes of the servos. Obviously, you don't need big servos for things like the eyebrows, and you need bigger ones for things like the neck. And the current control is this Sony PlayStation 2 controller. This is just kind of a layout of the electronics. Oh, I forgot the amplifier, of course. And like I said, I'm controlling it right now with a PlayStation 2 controller, but I'm also trying to develop this into a kit to be sold for people. So I wanted to have more expandability. One of the things is, you can see here, and this is just, I think, about the first picture I've taken of this, is what I call the Genesis host, or the Ghost module, which will be kind of an all-encompassing controller for it, so you could, or like an interface that you could control it with a PlayStation or your computer, or run your own type of remotes off of it, and be able to interface with the basic module a little easier. And these are just some of the hardware pictures. You can see that close enough here. Software is just the Arduino IDE, and I think this is just a snapshot of the code that runs the voice. So my goals for this project, I really want to create a functional, inexpensive, and expandable robotics kit. Simple design equals less cost, obviously, not just for me, but for anybody that I try to sell this to. Just as a reference, my original price point, I was hoping to sell these for $1,000 each, but now I think I can get that way less than $500 each, and that's retail. That is whenever I get it available, but that's how low I've cut my costs since I started this. I want to take kind of all the best of different technologies and keep it simple yet high quality. I want to keep it expandable so you can use multiple processors, lots of different sensors, and using the I2C communication in the Arduinos, that makes it very possible. And like I said, I like to take things apart and hack things. I want to make it hackable. So I don't want it to be one thing where you put it together, you're finished, you're done with it. I want people to tear into this and drill their own holes, put their own sensors into it, and create their own art and their own magic, and bring each one of their own Genesis products, give it their own life and personality. And that's really my dream, is to see a lot of different versions of this popping up. That's why I'm also trying to develop things like accessories for this, like the Ghost module I told you about, sensor kits, a machine intelligence brain, and even a body eventually. And like I said, I want it to be very personal, so you can choose everything about it. The color, hair, eyes, the language it speaks, whatever you'd like. I'm hoping to market this to schools and hobbyists mostly. I realize a lot of people on an individual level will take an interest in this, but I would really like to see this in schools someday, where they're using the Genesis module to teach robotics classes and to have this as a building project. I've also thought that students using this as a project or even businesses for advertisement might be a good idea as well. One more quick note. 2 weeks ago, I took this to a K through 6 exhibition of their science, technology, math, art, and engineering, and my version of STEM, I guess. And I had 4 and 5-year-olds coming up to this and intuitively figuring it out with the controller, just me sitting back at a table, and they were really having a great time with it. I think I only heard 2 people tell me it's creepy, which is probably a record. And I want to create something great out of this project, you know, not just for myself, but I want to add to the fabric of the robotics community. I want to make affordable humanoid robots and make Genesis and Rick Robotics household names. My personal goal is to see Rick Robotics be a $1 million company in 5 years. I want to create fun and rewarding jobs for people I know in our community. And eventually I'd like to move on with prosthetics, scale models, basically building smaller and smaller versions of it, and building other robots like BattleBots, movie robots, and other educational robots. And this last one here, Live the Dream. I've always wanted to build robots, and that's what I want to do forever. I haven't stopped since I saw Transformers at the beginning of the presentation, and I don't see that ever happening, ever changing. So I'd like to just keep moving on with this dream. So you might ask, what can Genesis do for you? Well, if you're a hobbyist looking to expand your robotics knowledge, if you're a teacher using robots as interaction tools for students ranging from children with autism or graduate level students. And this is actually a good graduate project. I know that firsthand because I use this as my graduate project. I wrote my thesis on the Genesis platform. Electronics and robotics classes and the STEM courses. Store owners looking for unique and interactive displays, and of course theatrical events. And I'm not going to read each one of these, but basically I just wanted to illustrate how this fits the STEM curriculum pretty well. It hits almost every topic. So, how can I ask you to help? Well, social media, of course. I'm obviously broadcasting this live right now, or at least I hope it's still going through. So if you like what you see, post something about it on Facebook. Check out my Facebook page, just under Rick Robotics. You can tweet anything about this at Genesis Robot, and check out my website, Rick Robotics. You can also build your own. I'd love to build one for you. Right now, I'm not ready to completely market these and sell these. There's still a lot of work yet, but if you like exactly what you see right here, I could do at least that much for you. I'd love to see what other people do with it and how they build it and change it. And of course, I want you to share it. Post it somewhere where other people can see the contribution that you've made to the project. Also, I'm a one-man company right now. So that means that I do the website, I do the 3D design, I do the software, I'm obviously doing the presentations, I do the business planning, I do jobs for what could be 4 or 5 people, and that slows me down quite a bit. So if you have any skills that you'd like to contribute, even a one-time, hey, I can help you with your web design or something, I would love that type of contribution as well. You can invite me to present Genesis again to your school, to your class, to your family, to your Boy Scouts, wherever you think they'd like it. And of course, the last one would be fundraising. The 2 on here are, the Kickstarter is an older campaign, so that's no longer active. The Patreon is a campaign that I am about to start very shortly here. And if you don't know what Patreon is, it's basically an artist contribution site where you can say, donate $1 or $10 or whatever to every project that I do, and I'll keep you updated, show you videos, and it gives you certain rewards. So check out my website and such, and I will definitely point you to my Patreon campaign as soon as that's launched. Oh, how about a robot demo? So, like I said, I'm using it with a PS2 controller. Actually, Dancing Robot's a little more distracting than I thought. So, you basically move the big parts of the jaws, or the neck, and the eyes with with the 2 analog sticks, and I don't know if you can quite see the eyes moving around there. I know a couple people in the front were kind of creeped out that I was looking at them before. The eyebrows, and I actually put in just a couple macros for voice too, so I could give more demonstrations, but so one good, nice thing I like about the IMIC 2 text-to-speech module as opposed to the first one. The first one had one voice, which was female. Actually, it could have had 2, but I used the female voice, which is why at the beginning I really called Genesis a girl, because it seemed to be developing that type of personality. The IMIC 2 has 9 voices. And you can pick between male, female, deep, high, and change pretty much everything about the voice. $60 from Parallax, and they're well worth it if you're doing anything with the voice. Oh, and I probably should have started with this voice. I don't know if you understood that. The part that's kind of garbled said, when I get my arms and hands, I'll become a maker too.
My name is GENESIS. I was created by Robotics.
So I just use these buttons to add my own little functions here. And I had to sacrifice a little bit. Sometimes it doesn't show up either. I did have a couple macros in here, but one of them wasn't working right, so it was happy and sad. Now this is just happy. All right, well, I do know that I have to share my time here with another robotics presenter, so I'm just going to open it up to questions and answers. And if you guys wanted to try it out, like I said, I had 4-year-olds trying to break this and it wasn't happening, so I'm going to leave this on. If you guys want to play around with it, then please feel free. Any questions from anybody? All right.
What do the different servo axes do? You got the jaw and the eyes.
Right. I have currently I have 9 servos in there. I'm going to actually be changing it to 10. So I have 2 with the neck, which is pan and tilt, 2 with the eyes, which are pan and tilt, 2 for eyelids, 1 on each side, 2 for eyebrows, 1 on each side, and 1 for the jaw. So those give it the basic expressions. I am going to be using a 3rd servo for the neck. I've decided that I don't really like just a pan and tilt for the neck, because people don't really look just like this. You know, they have this movement going on too. So I'm gonna be looking at a couple of designs that I've seen that have a 3 pivotal axis for the neck, and start using that as well. I have a design for that, but I don't have a printer that's kicking out parts fast enough yet, so I wanted to go with what works for tonight. Yeah?
Camera functionality in the eyes?
That's a very good question. This one, no. That one did, yes. There were a lot more features in that one, but there was, like I said, there was more hardware problems. So when starting from scratch, I decided to rebuild everything from the ground up. But yeah, that one actually did have some vision tracking and such.
Did it do just tracking, or did it do any image recognition?
No, it did not do any image recognition. I was working... Right, yeah, it could follow, but it didn't give me any recognition. I was working on some software for that, and then I decided to just start over with the platform. And the main reason really was every time it worked, I had to re-screw in certain nuts and bolts, and I got sick of doing that. So I'm like, I'm tired. I'm gonna rebuild the whole thing. But yes, and that is something that I plan on adding in eventually is features like vision recognition and the ability to follow and recognize people.
Very neat.
Yeah.
Can you talk about what's been challenging or rewarding, or where you acquired the most knowledge through the experience?
Okay, yes. I would love to answer all 3 of those. Let's start with challenging. Well, I started just wanting to build any robot head, so I looked online. And I couldn't find anything. I found 2 of them. I found one that was literally a 2-dimensional cardboard with a couple of eyeballs that looked all googly, and I said, that is not, I don't want that. And then I saw one beautiful one And you probably have seen this before. It's Sophia from Hanson Robotics, and just received citizenship in the Saudi Arabia. Yeah, that first robot citizen. Amazing. Well, there was a robot that he made before that, 15 years ago or something, and I started following his work way back then and watching his development. He actually will sell you a head like Sophia, by the way. At the time I looked, they were about $12,000. So if you have it, by all means. But yeah, so challenging. Figuring out how all this was going to go, how it was going to work together. You know, I can get tips here and there, but getting all of the pieces to fit just right. It doesn't necessarily work the way that you have it in your mind. So you see a lot of changes and make a couple compromises along the way. Rewarding. I love people's reactions. Maybe I'm a bit of an attention hog or something like that. I don't want to use the other word, but I like it when people see it and they're amazed. I especially love it when kids see it and they feel like it's a real person, or it could be their first interaction they've ever had with a robot, and here they see like an actual face they can touch and talk to, and then they can grab this, you know, and move it around, and now it's talking to them. I love seeing that reply. I love seeing that type of, so that's why I decided to try to make this more available to people, so that I could actually, you know, see that reaction more and more.
Learn most of the area.
Yeah, learning. I'm definitely not going to step aside my college education, because especially going to Hawkeye for an associate degree, I probably learned more there than I did at UNI, to be honest with you. And I love UNI. That's my alma mater. That's an amazing school. But Hawkeye was very hands-on and forced you to deal with the technical problems as you're working with them. But I think truly the most that I've learned was from interacting with other people that are much smarter than me, that have done so much more, or even in different areas of robotics and electronics, that have been able to give me advice. And of course, just diving in and doing it myself, you know, gained a lot of experience as well. You always fail. Promise you, guaranteed every time. You're going to fail if you want to succeed, you know, because there's always that point you're going to hit that roadblock, and it's not going to go the way you want it. And that's a failure. So what? Move past it. You know, figure out how to get around it and do it again. You know, Thomas Edison built 10,000 light bulbs before one of them could work. You know, that's a lot of failures. So, for one good success. All right, I appreciate the questions. Thank you. I know it's a long answer, by the way. Anybody else?
Where do you have your 3D printing done at?
In my basement. Yeah, I bought a 3D printer about 6 years ago when they really started to become cheaper and available, you know, to consumers. You and I had one, and I think it was a $20,000 printer, and really it didn't work. I mean, it didn't work very well at all. And I wanted to produce more of these faces, so I took it to a company that could plastic mold. And they said, sure, we can do one. It'll be $8,000. You give us your design. We'll send it away. In 5 weeks, you'll get it back. By the way, if there's a hole that you don't like or whatever, it's going to cost you that $8,000 setup fee again. Like, that's ridiculous. So I saw this 3D printer online for like $700. And by the way, you can get the same printer now for $2. But I thought, you know what? 10th of the price, I'll just build my own parts. So I did that, and again, lots and lots of failures. I heard somebody say in a 3D printing forum, if you want to get really good at 3D printing, use a bad 3D printer. And I think that's where I was. But anyway, yeah, I do that in my home, in my basement, since I have doubled my 3D printer capacity. I got one more about a month ago. And they do take a while. You can see the face is actually in several sections, so you have like the jaw. Just this face mask without this top section with the eyebrows, that's probably about a 7.5 hour print. So it does take some time. But again, a lot faster than 8 weeks to get back your products. Yeah.
This is probably a silly question, but I watched a TV show called I Am Frankie, and it's about this girl who is an android, but she's so well made that she looks human. Do you intend to do something like that with the Genesis project, or are you just going to stick with like upper body or head or something?
That's a good question. First thought in my head, it sounds a lot like a show I grew up with, also an inspiration, Small Wonder. About probably half of you know what I'm talking about, the other half are like, what's he talking about? Sounds a lot like what you're talking about. Yes, I would love to actually develop this far enough so it is a convincing human replicant. Now, I know that scares people because, you know, then they automatically jump to what if the robot apocalypse happens? Well, I only make friendly robots, so as long as you stick with Rick Robotics, you're never going to have that problem. But yes, I feel like the ultimate goal is to do that for any robotics company. And the main reason is we're very interactive and intermingled with our technology now. Everybody here, including this young kid here, I'll bet he's got a cell phone in his pocket. Everybody has technology on them. And the robotic part of it is making the interface closer and more seamless. So if you have an Android in your house, getting your mail, washing your dishes, you know, ordering you milk when you run out, you know, you want to make that interface as easy as possible. And having that interface look and feel human is the obvious next step in that pursuit. So yes, I do intend to go on with that. Will it happen in the next couple of years? Probably not. I'm hoping to maybe get a couple arms on it. But yeah, full body convincing, we'll see. Anybody else? Yeah.
Is the R&D work, is that done all by yourself? Or do you reach out to other universities and such as prosthetics and robotics is such a huge, I know like Illinois is doing a lot of work with it and other colleges that aren't too far away. Have you reached out at all? Or?
That's
Is
actually
that the challenge for you?
Yes, that is also a very good challenge for me, and that's a very good question. I would say 90% of my R&D is done by myself, and that actually is very unfortunate, which is why I'm trying to present more and reach out more, because I do take inspiration from other people, and I watch a lot of YouTube videos now, and in fact, he probably doesn't know that I'm doing this right now, but there is a guy in England, or in the UK, and his name is James Bruton. And if you get a chance, watch his channel or look at xrobots.com or .co.uk. He builds amazing robots and he does them relatively quickly. And they are just beyond incredible. So, and he lays out his design work, how he 3D prints, how he does his software, and actually following projects like his and others are actually really kind of where I get some of my answers from. So not everything, but a lot of my R&D does come from inspiration of others. And yes, I will gladly take help from anybody who's got any type of suggestion for me. Yeah?
Do you have a plan for miniaturizing that somewhere? Are you looking at custom PCBs, or what's kind of roadmap down?
Yep. Actually, yes. As far as the circuitry, obviously you can see, and I'll go ahead and show you here. Go ahead and, I know it's kind of creepy that a neck can do that too. I don't like the owl, so I'm going to design that out too. But you can see everything's kind of hanging by wires, and that's just for the development. I do intend to build smaller custom PCBs, mostly because now they're getting very inexpensive. And if you use a software design like 123 PCB or Eagle or something like that, you can basically design it, give them your bill of materials, send it out, and they'll give you a board in a couple weeks. So I do intend to miniaturize it like that. I'll be very honest in saying I'm not very good with hand surface mounting SMTs right now, but if I can find a cheap way to get them on there or mass produce them, I'd love to give that a shot as well. As far as the actual frame, the miniatures will not only be smaller, but they will have a few less features. So, for instance, the neck size smaller may not have the 3-axis neck, just because it'll save room on servos, but it'll also save a lot in the overall cost. So if maybe you're not ready to buy, say, a $500 robot, you could buy a $200 one and get 80% of the functionality, you know, just to see where you want to go with that. So I hope that kind of summarized the miniaturizing. And I think that I have one that I want to build that's about that big, and it's going to be basically like a bobblehead with LEDs in it, just kind of a cute. I'm actually thinking about only doing those as a Kickstarter reward, you know, like pledge, you know, $5 and I'll send you one of these cute little guys. So not necessarily a robot, but a nice little gimmick. Anyone else? All right, well, I definitely want to thank you guys for coming here and sitting here and listening to me. And, you know, if you wanted to take a look at this and play around, like I said, I'm going to leave it up here for the whole competition, or whole session. So I don't know how much time we have left. How much time do I have?
Thank you.